And we will appreciate in case if you are not speaking, if you can mute your mic, that will be great. So at least for other people, it is a bit convenient. So we start our this second webinar, which is part of our series of webinar for the CSO strengthening, and that's part of our PINS partnership agenda. So I'll just quickly run through the agenda for today. So basically, today we will be having a brief talk about PIN and the civil society now introduction. The second will be around uh, the focus will be around the strategic planning process and its step. And the third element will be around tools and resources for strategic planning. So as we have been doing this earlier, so basically this one is around more interactive exercise. So this is for the local NGOs and for you. So it will be good to hear from you, your experiences, reflection, and the kind of questions you have. So at least accordingly we can uh, work together and improve our organizations. So in terms of my own background, I have worked in the development sector for almost 2 decades in various roles in various contexts in different countries. And my last role was with Plan International in their HQ and then the country office. And for the last 13 months, I'm with People in Need as partnerships advisor. So currently, I'm based in Iraq doing some mission visit, but otherwise I'm based in Pakistan. So with that, I'll just uh, at least we had some reflection from colleagues. We have people from Asia, Africa, and Europe in this webinar. So that's at least we have a good mix of people representing from different locations. And looking forward for your engagement. Just a quick introduction on PIN's Relief and Development Department strategy. Like we have three programmatic pillars focusing on climate resilience, emergency response and recovery, and then third one is civil society and inclusive governance. And partnership is one of the organizational priority for the our new strategy. And as part of our partnership priority, we focus on the right partnership with the right partners for the right purpose in various contexts. And overall, like we want to have a better impact, and that's where for our quality programming, we are more focusing on our partnership agenda. And for this one, we are having the four broader outcomes changes which we want to see by 2026 end of our strategy period. And this is something which I had already shared it earlier in our last webinar. But again, in general, like we want to diversify our partnership portfolio. We want to have a strategic and impactful partnership, and we want to showcase our work with local partners. And we really appreciate if partners are appreciating us rather than we appreciate ourselves. So, like these are some of the key areas um, of evaluating ourselves. And in terms of how we have been moving on in terms of our partnership strategy, we have a partnership cycle which is listed here, having 6 steps focusing on partners identification, partner assessment, contract signing, quality implementation, M&E, and exit and sustainability. We have similarly 6 partnership principles. Those are rooted from our past experience in development and humanitarian context, and also PIN is a local was a local NGO uh, 30 years back, and the way we have evolved based on our learning, our work, we came up with this civil society now, whereby we are sharing pins on resources like the way we use them in our organization. We are sharing it with the wider organizations so they can adopt in their own context. So that's part of our a localization agenda or part of the civil society strengthening or partnership strengthening initiative. So basically our partnership principles, our partnership cycle, they are rooted on grand bargain, charter for change, localization, and core humanitarian standards. So in a way, this webinar series is also part of the same agenda of supporting local actors. So this is in a nutshell background of our journey on partnership agenda, and PIN is kind of a medium-sized INGO gradually evolving. So we are not a very established INGO in a sense. And with our that humble experience, we are a bit more open to interact with local actors and support them. And in this way, we also mutually improve our own learning, our own processes. So before I move to the next content of strategic planning, I was just having a question or a reflection. Since some of you already attended the last webinar, which was on board effectiveness, so I was just wondering, in case if any of you have any question, any clarity, or any reflection on the last webinar, whereby we focused on basics of governance and board effectiveness, the role of the board members, the role of subcommittees, and how the board can be strengthened through their own self-assessment, and there were certain tools for board effectiveness. So in case if anyone has any question, any reflection, any query on that, I'll be happy to respond before I move to the content of today's session. In case if there is any, please raise your hand or unmute yourself and speak up, or you can write it in the chat box. If if you don't have, if you can give me a smiley face, so it means I can move on. So I'm not seeing, and okay, perfect. So then I will move on. In the chat box, I have um, shared another question on menti.com. If you can take 1 minute to answer that question, that's around the strategic planning in your organization. And the code is the same. So if you could answer the question, that will be good. At least it will give me some sense like uh, on which aspect should I focus more. So at least I can see four colleagues have responded. Okay, so far we have around 9 responses. So I will appreciate if other colleagues uh, those have not responded, because considering this trend, then I will see like where I need to focus more. In case if most of you have it, then we can reflect more on the content of the existing strategic plan. So far we have around 16 answers. So nine, they said like they have it, three, they don't have it, four of them, they are developing it. So I'll appreciate if other colleagues, those have not responded, if they could respond it, that will be good to to get a sense, and accordingly we discuss. And I will appreciate, like if you can share openly, honestly, and objectively, and that will be good for our collective learning, because here we are for learning from each other experiences, and my role as a facilitator is to support for our mutual learning and mutual growth. And there is no expert in among ourselves. At least I am not an expert. So we are here for our collective learning. So at least majority of us we have it. So now the question is, why do we need? So far I have been speaking, so I hope like we can read it clearly. There are few reflective questions like why do we need a strategic plan? Which approach for a strategic plan needs to be opted? Because we all of us we use different ways of doing the strategic planning, and what is the right structure, or how we can make the outline or content of the strategic plan, because you will see some organization they have a very long document, some very short, and how it was developed. So for example, in certain organization it's developed through consultant, in some it is done through internal staff, and in certain contexts it is done with a combination of staff and consultant, and it takes depending few weeks to few months, and then there are different actors those are engaged. So anyone who would like to share on these questions, because these are reflective questions, so in case if the organization those have it, if they could share on these question, either most of them or few of them, that will be good to hear. And please raise your hand or unmute yourself, one person at a time. That will be good to speak up. So who is going to break the silence? At least we could see like 12 organization they indicated they have the strategic plan. Yes, Vana, please go ahead.
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Vana from Ankawa Humanitarian Committee in Erbil, Iraq. Um, uh, like I want to share some of our experiences. We recently developed our strategic plan, and by the way, it's not an easy process. We started back in September last year, 2022, and we just wrapped up everything and we finalized it. It was a very good experience, and it's really a very helpful document to have at each organization. So basically, first of all, why do we need a strategic plan? Because in order for your organization to identify their goals and what are you planning to do in the coming, let's say, 5 or 10 years from now, like whichever you decide to be the lifetime of your strategy. So you need that plan. So you have a very clear vision or idea where to focus, what kind of goals for you to identify in order not to be lost here and there and you don't know what to apply for and which kind of projects or other activities to implement. This is a very good tool to keep you focused and to keep you going forward and improve from your organization and your projects and work. Which approach for strategic plan needs to be opted? Like I don't know, like, is this the approach while developing the strategic plan, or this is after what do you mean by this question?
Before, like there are different approach. For example, some people they go with a survey, consultation, meetings, and workshop. So depending like what
Yes, that's.
methodology.
Mhm. I'm sorry for interruption, but that's right. Talking about our own experience, we went for the workshops with a partner or consultants, let's say, which was the best practice in my opinion, to be honest, because we benefit from another international organization and their experience and their technical advisors in developing our own plan, strategic plan. So this was a good experience for us. And what should be the structure of the strategic plan? In the strategic plan, we have to have a very holistic, let's say, cover from all aspects: the internal, the external, the goals, all the possible. Any single detail that it's possible to be included, it should be there. You have to have a very wide vision, like what are the possible, let's say, risks like that you will face in the future and how to deal with them. I mean, a very holistic vision. And how to develop it, again, it depends on the approach that you are following. But we started with a very intense workshop or meetings with our partner who are very experienced, like they are operating in the humanitarian field, let's say, since the decades. So we developed from scratch. We identified that what are the start. We started from our vision and mission, and heading from there, we also identified our goals and what do we want to focus on, depending on our mission and vision. Okay, this was like basically how we started it. What is the role of the board and the management and the stakeholders? The role of the board, like according to our organization hierarchy, it was at the very end, to be honest, because they needed to check and approve it. So the management and the other staff were mostly involved in developing this strategy. Like most of the departments were the active, let's say, members doing developing this tool, and the stakeholders were like. Involved in the, let's say, in a way of internal analysis, or external, sorry, in the section of internal external analysis. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I hope like this was helpful. Thank you.
No, thank you, Anna, for your sharing insight, and thank you for being open that appreciating the role of board members, like the way you people engage them rather than in the beginning. So that was a good insight, and overall, like what you shared, that's really spot on, like the process. And again, this is again one way of looking at it, and there might be some other colleagues who will have a different perspective experiences. So we have Govinda. So please go ahead, Govinda ji.
Okay, namaste everyone. It is nice to talk with you all. This is Govinda from Nepal. I am representing from Kirdag, Nepal, one of the members of this civil society network in Nepal, and we are the local NGOs working in Karnataka regions. And especially, it is very good discussion about the strategic plan and how can we do our strategic plans more visible and targeting to the capacity development of the local civil society working in different sectors. So my thought or my suggestions is that it should be more focusing to the capacity building, not only some what to say resource generations and some collaboration, but it should be focused on the different perspective of capacity building of the local NGOs, so that they can be developed and able to have a strong civil society and in civil society movement, especially raising the voices as a watchdog, not only confined with the project resources and some targeted, but the a bit broader civil society voices and campaign to particular countries. For example, in Nepal, we are not only implementing the project, but we are also doing some of the activities that will raise the people voice and civil society voice and do the watchdog of the government in different policy advocacies, and also creating the pressure to the government if the government is not in the right track. So we are my suggestion in that is, while developing our strategic plan, we need to think beyond that also, not only confined for the resource generations, log frame, and short-end activities. And I think we will also think in our strategic plan for broader civil society movement and role for maintaining the transparency, good governance, and promoting the democratic practices in the country. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Govindaji. And I think like you are right, and this is something like the next step. For example, what might be the focus, the content of the strategic plan. But yeah, these are some of the strategies which we can have instead of focusing on resource mobilization. If we focus on democratization, civil society strengthening, the resources comes with the way we design our strategy. Anyone else who would like to reflect on their strategic plan, like how it was developed, which approach did they follow, before we move to the next part, which is again kind of self-reflective question. Okay, I don't see. So the other question, for example, in case the organizations, those are having the strategic plan, and since we work with multiple partners, and particularly with international NGOs, so the question which I was having, how do we differentiate between the strategic plan of a local NGO or a international NGO? Are they similar? Are they different? How do we see, like the similarities and differences? And the other question which I was having, where as and when if particularly the organizations, those are having the strategic plan, how do we integrate core humanitarian standards or sphere standards or some other relevant either country level or regional or global standards in their strategic plan? And more importantly, like how we include the gender equality, social inclusion tools or gender marker in certain organization they follow it. So how do we apply in our strategic plan? So anyone who would like to reflect on these three questions, that will be good to get some insight. And please don't feel shy. We have some good uh, number of organizations having the strategic plan. There is nothing right or wrong. We are here for collective learning. So please be open and be bold to share. I'm not seeing any hands.
Hello. Hello,
Yeah,
Anwar. This is
yes.
Dan from Center of Concern Awasa. We do
Okay.
have a strategic plan, which is for 5 years. This strategic plan has developed initially by consultants, but now we are under the development of new strategic plan. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Daniel, thank you for sharing it. And anyone else who would like to share, particularly on CHA, the sphere, JC, or gender marker?
Hello.
Yes, Ravindra, please go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. In terms of Clean Up Nepal, we do have we had a strategic plan earlier. Right now, we do not have, but we are working on strategic plan for 2023 to 2028. So, in my opinion, an strategic plan is the effectively which help to strengthen the that the organization main initiative. Yeah. Also, it can contribute to establish the organization overarching direction and outline its mission and vision because we have two direction throughout our mission and vision. And it will also easy to make us the best decision based on the strategy and what types of work, what types of our thematic areas to whom we are focusing for. So the strategic planning itself supporting us to contributing on that thematic areas and cross-cutting areas and our policies based on that we can expansion our working areas based on our strategic planning. So the strategic planning is the very good direction to the organization and it helps to strengthen the main initiative of the organization. So we based on that, this is the very good that the meeting for Clean Up Nepal. Today we will learn very more and we will that working for our new strategic planning and it will very much helpful to us. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you, Ravindra. And it's good that you are like in the developing stage. And again, this webinar will provide some more insight and definitely we will discuss more in coming slides, like how we can have it. So we have another colleague,
Yeah,
get him.
yeah,
Yeah, please go ahead.
yeah. Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I'm Getacho from Ethiopia. I'm from WIMA. So, yeah, we have the strategic plan, which is recently developed. The strategic plan we have is planned for 3 years period from 2023 to 2025. So it's a very new and recent plan that we have, and we have also started implementing it. So we have been implementing the plan starting from January 2023. It is developed by actually the planning process was led by external consultant, but the staff, the WIMA staff, and the community, and also the government partners have exhaustively contributed to it, even though it was led by a consultant. All the stakeholders, the community representatives, and the staffs have, meaningfully contributed to it. Yeah. So actually, the process we passed through, while developing this plan was like we reviewed the previous strategic plan. We tried to assess the strong areas we had, and also the key lessons that we can learn from the past strategic plan. We have also tried to review the external context, like the government strategies, the donor, directions or policies, in order to align ourselves, in order to align our plan to all, these government policies and also the donor priorities, and yeah, and also to know uh, the real need of our communities, because after all, our plan, the strategic plan that we have to have, should be able to, enable us to respond to this changing or ever changing community needs on the ground, and also because we have to align ourselves to the government priorities and also the donor priorities. So these are some of the steps that we tried to take while developing the plan. Yeah. So yes,
Yeah.
this is just to share.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you, Gitachi, and it was good that like the way you spelled out the the process and the external environment scanning and the analysis of the trend. So that's a good. So we will take one more comment from Muhammad Barakat, then we will proceed for the next section. Yes, please, Barakat sir.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mohammed Barakat from Syria. Our organization, we have put our strategic plan since 2 years ago. It was very necessary to put like this plan to define what we have to do, what our purpose, and how to achieve these goals. We put these goals according to the development, according to the sustainable development goals. We have prepared this strategic plan and developed it according to the needs that our community, local community, is want. Thanks.
Okay, yeah. So thank you, Barakat, for sharing it. And again, like what we will be discussing in our next few slides. So it will be based again on different existing practices, different academic literature, and on the overall trajectory of the development sector. So there is no right or wrong, like approach or answer, and it will be good even if the organizations those have it or those are planning to develop it or developing it. If they have questions, please do write it in the chat box. Do raise your hand so at least we can discuss them and clarify before moving on further. So again, this is for us. So the more question you will ask, the better clarity we will have. So that's just a kind of acknowledgement. And in this slides, we will be sharing some other existing models or some processes. Those are being used by different organizations. So just they are for the reference. I'm not saying they are good or they are bad, but it's just giving a flavor like what exists in terms of the available resources. So like if we see historically, like a human being, the organizations they have their own life cycle as well. So this life cycle, like we can see if we just reflect in our own country context where we operate, the number of CSOs might be in thousands, or they can be in 100,000 or less than 100,000, but not all of them are active or not all of them are surviving. So some of them they just stuck between birth and adolescence. Few of them they move on between adolescence to consolidation. Few of them they get prime or maturity stage, and some of them they become too bureaucratic or they become too old and they die. And then very few of them they have a dip and then they re-emerge as an organization. So it's like a human being. So this life cycle goes on. So the organizations those reach to their consolidation or prime or maturity stage, they are the one those have a very strategic thinking or strategic clarity, and then they have a kind of a strategic plan because they are going in a more programmatic approach and structure. So basically, if we want to support other organization, as our one of our colleague was saying, like we should focus on civil society strengthening rather than on resource mobilization. So these are the ways we can like focus on our own organization. And if we want to enrich our organization, we need to be mindful like what are the organizational capacities of an organization, what are the elements of an organization which we need to be mindful, which we need to focus. Because if we are just focusing on one or two aspects, we will not be able to complete the holistic picture of organization, and we can't develop a good strategic plan or strategic direction. Because if we are clear on our strategies, but if we are not identifying the potential areas of investing them or resourcing them, either financially or human resource wise, then it might not work. So it's more kind of a holistic approach to navigate for this organizational strategic plan development process, and this is something which we need to be mindful. And when we talk about the strategic plan, so it is kind of a fit between mission of the organization and its internal strength and external opportunities, and it's a kind of a shared vision. So basically the capacity framework which I was just presenting, so it's kind of a everything is linked. Like in a society we live, we work, it has a vision, the mission, strategy, program, projects, and then the support structure around HR, around system management, and then linkages. So it's kind of a holistic package, like which makes this right fit between the strategic direction of the organization, the organizational internal capacities, and external linkages or external resources. So and it gives, like, based on our learning, our impact, our work, how we want to reshape our energy, our direction, and our energy and resources. So in terms of the the last webinar which we discussed around the board's responsibilities, so like strategic planning is one of the board's primary responsibility, and it cannot be delegated um, to the chief executive or to an external consultant or another staff. So basically, if we see, like the board's 10 basic responsibilities, the elements, those are linked with the strategic plan. They are interlinked, and this is something, the key responsibility of the board is, Vana was sharing about the way their board was engaged. In reality, that's how in many organizations the board might be sitting in the beginning, then they might be reviewing in the end. But in certain organization where the board has a strong ownership, they are engaged one way or other in different processes of the strategic plan development. So it's again more on the organizational dynamics to organization. So it's something which we need to be mindful in, where the boards are uh, not clear, or they are having some other uh, issues or priorities, then we need to revisit the board members, because if they are not having the ownership on driving the strategic plan of the organization, then there is a question mark, are we having the right board members? So again, this is something, another food for thought, which we were discussing it last time. And again, why we need to have a strategic plan, as most of you shared, and you were spot on. Like, we need to have a clarity on our direction. We need to have a clarity on our resources, and overall clarity, like how things they will be done. For example, if you want to work on education or WASH or civil society strengthening, how it will be resourced, how it will be materialized, what processes we will follow, and how we will be sharing the result, and which kind of support mechanism internally and externally we will be looking to complement to our this strategic planning process. So like these are uh, some of the reasons why we go um, for a strategic plan. And again, it is not mandated that from the beginning each organization should have a strategic plan. Some, with the passage of time, they developed. So it is based on the context, the need of the organization, and the purpose, like they want to have it, and it's not one-off exercise. So like it's more kind of a intentional thinking, like why we want to have this strategic plan and what might be the modalities. And then there are the areas where when we should not go into the strategic planning, like if there are issues within the leadership or management and leadership, or leadership and the board, there are issues or changes, then we should not. Or if there are conflicts, again, we should not get into this process. And when we know like it might be creating unrealistic expectation, like the external context is not supportive, or the way we are taking it, the approach is not right one, it can create a backfire. And in case if the organization is not having the right type of knowledge, or it's not understanding the organizational capacities holistically, and just taking it because it's a donor demand, or it's a kind of a in approach, so then it can backfire. So these are not the time when we should get into the strategic planning process. So I hope like I'm just sharing these are commonly expressed by most of you. There might be few things those might be new. So in case if there is any question, any comment, any idea to share, feel free before we move to the next part of the session. If not, then can you give me a smiley face or a thumbs up so I know like we are good? Okay. So the next section will be a bit theoretical, but hopefully it might be of interest. So like in terms of the 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 approach we were talking, like what is the model or approach for the strategic plan development? There are different school of thought for the strategic plan development. So this one might be a bit theoretical. So there is a very basic model which is driven from mission statement. Then we have goal, strategy, and we have action plan. So this is a very simple, traditional approach of a strategic plan document, and then there is a issue-based model which is driven from PESTEL or SWOT analysis, as most of you shared. Like you carry out an external context analysis. Then, based on that, the mission statement is developed, and then the rest they are similar, except based on the action plan, then operating plan, budget, and some kind of monitoring mechanism is also devised. So that's kind of a bit more evolved approach of a issue-based model. Like many organizations, they either focus on education, or they do the work on around influencing or advocacy for gender, or for education, or for basic rights. So again, then they go with that kind of an approach of issue-based model approach for the strategic planning. And again, like there is no right or wrong approach. Again, depending on the genesis or the origin of the organization, the approaches, the modalities are adopted and carried out. And then the third model is alignment model. Like which based on they're working, they just revisit the status of the organization, identify strength, kind of SWOT analysis they do. They come up with the strategies, and then they update the strategic plan. So it can be a basic model, or it can be a issue-based model, and then they just go with the fine-tuning or re-updating. Like some of you, as indicated, like you were having it, but you are just revisiting or refreshing your uh, strategic plan. So in a way, like some of them they follow the whole process rigorously, or some very few of them they go with the alignment model. So again, depending which one might fit for your organization, people they can adopt it accordingly. The third model, which is lately quite in, which is around theory of change model. Since many INGOs, they have started using the theory of change approach for their programming, and this is how the whole focus around the strategic plan has shifted. So basically, it goes for PEST or PESTIL or SWOT or stakeholder analysis. Then instead of vision mission, we say purpose or vision mission statement. We include then the program goal, key activities, outcome results. So instead of after the key activities, we focus more on outcome results, and then the project or annual plans, resource and implementation plan, like which includes the organizational structure, the business development plan, and then we have a monitoring section including the risk aspects. So this is more around the the strategic plan around the theory of change, and it's kind of evolving, so it's not static. Particularly the programmatic sectors, they are more open since they rely on the theory of change approach, and each program has its own theory of change, and then it is kind of evolving. So the rest section might be a bit clear. So which any questions so far on this these four models, like basic model, issue based, alignment, or theory of change model, or was it too technical or academic? Anything which is not clear or confusing? Are we together? Yes, Stila, please go ahead.
My question would be on whether there are certain instances when a specific model would maybe be more preferable. For instance, I've seen the theory of change being used more in like advocacy or organizations that do certain types of programming approaches. So like, is there a way you choose a certain model as opposed to the other? And are there instances where different models can be used and interchanged within the same organization, depending on maybe what the strategic approach for the organization is? Because maybe sometimes that evolves. I don't know whether that's clear.
No. That's a good question, Stella. So, for example, like now I'll just give you a very precise. For example, out of these four, the three models can be simultaneously used. For example, an organization which is working on a issue-based work. For example, they are working on wash sector and practicing on behavior change communication and doing the advocacy and influencing work as well. So basically, their strategic plan was uh, hypothetically on a issue-based model. And based on the changing context, changing trend, they go with a alignment model, because then they had to integrate the theory of change model in their existing issue-based model. Because if you see many organizations, international NGOs, donors in particular, they refer theory of change as a program approach, or they instead of RBM or instead of LFA, they say like, if you need to have a theory of change for your this program. So this is how the issue-based model through alignment approach is converted into a theory of change model. And again, there is no right or wrong way of doing it. It's just more, for example, if you go for a lighter touch, or if you go a more rigorous exercise of this alignment or revisiting, that depends on the organization dynamics, the scope, the outreach, the portfolio. So it depends. But again, like there are ways like it can be managed. And for example, currently many INGOs particularly as you were saying it, the advocacy and influencing work, they are referring theory of change a lot. So as a result of a development trend, we see many local NGOs, they are also adopting the theory of change in their program. But again, even among INGOs, you will see there are very few. Those are still not going with the theory of change, but it's kind of an evolving process. And again, this can be done by using it differently. I hope I answered your question. In case if there is any follow-up question or anyone else has any other question, comment, please feel free to add.
Yes, that's answered. Thank you.
Okay, so in TREC, they had done through the Common Ground Initiative a kind of a study on strategic planning for CSOs, and then they came up with a cycle which is again shared here, and then they had around the overall broader structure of a strategic plan, like from a situation analysis to the theory of change, the constituency, and then the mission, and then the changes which we want to see, again linking it with the theory of change and the strategic issues, priorities, and objectives. And on the other hand, in Civicus, they had engaged a consultant. That consultant produced something, so it focused on around values, vision, mission, problem identification, overall objectives. So these are more, the Civicus one is more from advocacy or influencing perspective. But again, this is a kind of a uh, abstract form of outline of any strategic plan, and this is something again a good reflective uh, document. So now my question to the organizations, those are having the strategic plan, which model is a fit for your organization, or which, uh, considering the dynamics, the structure which we shared for each model, where do you think like your organization is having a basic model, issue-based alignment model, or theory of change model? Which kind of a strategic plan you are having? It will be good to hear from colleagues, those have the strategic plan. Either you can write in the chat box or you can speak up. I hope my answer is clear. Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, this is Getacho. We have used the theory of change model.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay, that's good.
yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, again, in case if you are not interested in sharing now, you can reflect it at later on. In terms of the process, because of the time constraint, I will just quickly run a few. So in terms of the strategic planning process, again, there is no right or wrong process depending on the organization, its portfolio, its context. It can be adopted. Generally, it has a six process way. Like first, we need to have a clarity on why we need a strategic plan. Then having some kind of a ownership of the board, like why we want to have it, because again, it's not a donor driven, it's not an coming from an external pressure, but it's more based on our own internal reflection, changing context. And then we need to have a strategic planning committee which can come up with a different set of requirements, like who will be having what role, do we need to engage an external consultant, internal colleagues, what could be the modality, what might be the TOR, In later on in the slides, we will be sharing some of the practical tools from different organizations, so those could be seen. And then the third stage is whereby we go with a specific workshops. The duration could vary from 1 day to 3 day or 4 day. So the first one could see the internal and external context by conducting SWOT, PACE, PASTEL, and based on that one, we come up with the vision, mission, and purpose and organizational values. The second workshop, again, driven from the literature review, studies, evaluations, the coming up with the programmatic priorities, the issues, challenges which we want to address. And the third one is around the cross-cutting strategies like communication, advocacy, gender, and so on. And then the support functions. The fourth one is around risk and sustainability. So these, like depending the number of workshop, the design of the workshop would vary from the organization to organization. Then we have the first outline based on the consolidation of the workshop, and then we go with the approval and implementation phase. So these are generally the 6 step. In case if there is any question, any comment for clarity on these steps, please feel free. Otherwise, we will be sharing these with you so you can read them at your own. Any question? So in case if we see as a roadmap wise, yes, Mohan, please go ahead. Okay. So as a roadmap wise, so this is again those 7 uh, steps from the cycle. They are elaborated, and this is how the 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 trajectory goes for the strategic plan. Um, and then there are few basic tips. Again, these are FAQs. Hopefully, these might be good to see. Like in case of local NGOs, since it takes a lot of time, so the ideal duration can be 3 to 5 years. Having a 2 year strategic plan is not viable because the way the efforts are made for the strategic plan development, so it's always better. And the ideal length of the strategic plan document should be between 15 to 20 pages. Maximum, it can be 25 pages. And in certain organizations, they have a few annexes as part of the strategic plan. Those could be linked with the strategic plan, or those could be more as an internal resource. And in some organizations, they have an external abridged version, which is between 3 to 5 pages, which they share it externally with everyone, because in certain organization the reading tendency, particularly among donor, is not there. So usually then they prefer with a abridged version. And then they have a longer version with annexes for their own staff or their key uh, colleagues. So again, depending on the context, the requirement, it can be. And ideally, the strategic plan should be reviewed as and when it has a midterm or mid period, and in the end, before developing a new strategic plan, we should also have a proper review of the implementation, and based on the learnings, we should incorporate them in our next strategic plan. Uh, then there is a question like, if there is no board ownership, it's left on the management, uh, then we need to reflect why we are going for this strategic plan development, and who should lead. Again, depending on the organization, it can be decided, like in certain cases They engage a consultant for the facilitation, and the staff is leading in certain cases. Staff and consultant, they lead the process, and it's being oversight by the board members. So again, it varies. There is no right or wrong, but uh, one way or other, the engagement of board, either at the design stage, at different stages of design, should be there, or they could be overall oversighting it through different board members. And again, in terms of the time taking process, as Vana was sharing, it took quite a lot of time. For local NGOs, it can take between 1 to 3 months, and for INGOs, it takes between 3 to 6 months, depending on the nature, the context of the organization. So I hope uh, these FAQs might be helpful in case if you have any other practical question which you have it, please do flag it, do raise it. Either you can write in the chat box, or if you have it, please feel free to share it before we move to the next part, which might be a bit reflective again. So, any question? It seems like I'm speaking today too much. Any question? Any reflection? So there is a question, if we need inception report for the workshop or for the strategic plan. So usually we don't need inception report, but usually like for each meeting or each consultation or each workshop, the the proceedings, the key learnings should be documented. The outcome should be documented because they one way or other they contribute to the strategic plan document. I hope I answered this question. Any other question? Okay, so there is another good question from Mohan. How do we do the context analysis for the strategic plan? So basically, as we were sharing it, in certain organization, what they do, they carry out internal context analysis by conducting a SWOT analysis, or they carry out a specific thematic or sector-wise analysis like gender analysis, environmental analysis. So those are more internal one, whereas in terms of seeing macro context, macro environment, the past political, economic, social, and technological, and or pastel, which is the same like pest, but then it includes environmental and legal because of the regulatory context in many countries is changing. So the pastel analysis is used, and then the stakeholder analysis is also used the way we do it at the project level, but then this one is done at the strategic plan level, in a more broader way. And then uh, this pastel and stakeholder analysis, they are combined with the SWOT analysis. So through these three tools, basically the external context is analyzed, and in certain context, the specific sector or thematic analysis that is also complementing, for example, JC analysis or environmental scanning or environmental assessment. So they also add to this process of context analysis. And again, these they provide a good base for designing the program interventions or program strategies in a particular country. Any other question? These two questions, they were really good, and I'm happy that you are asking more questions. And in fact, we should ask more questions, like whatever and we should not be shy that these might be simple or very basic questions, but we should ask them if we have. Okay, any other question? If not, if you are not asking, then let me ask you a question. Okay, so there was one more. Uh, okay, so that's a good to whom strategic planning should be communicated. So basically, as and when we start this process of strategic planning uh, development, so basically we should engage all our stakeholders, like most of you were sharing, like the way it was developed in participatory manner by engaging communities, stakeholders, donors, INGOs, peer organizations. So whoever we engage, and then whoever our stakeholders are, like the people we work with. So basically, we should share either the long version, the abridged version, or the outcome of our strategic plan. And it's always good to have a launching or sharing, a proper sharing of the strategic plan. So basically, the other organization, the government entities, the donors, the peer organization, INGOs, corporate sector, academic institutions, like whoever is relevant with our work, they should know, and then they can contribute and they can explore partnership accordingly. So it's more from a positioning perspective, like we should communicate it through different ways and channels about our this strategic plan. So it's not one off. For example, in certain organization, as and when if they have a meeting or some discussion. So then before the meeting, they will send it via email, the strategic plan or the program specific strategies, or this is what we do, or this is what our direction is. So then the meeting goes to a next level rather than starting with the basic. So that was also a good question. Any other follow-up question or any additional questions from anyone else? Otherwise, I have one question to all of you. So this is a kind of a scenario, um, like there is a local organization. They have a very comprehensive bylaws because the country is having a very good regulatory framework. Most of the content of the strategic plan, they think like it's covered. Do they still need to have a strategic plan? What do you suggest them? For example, if you are working with local organizations, uh, and if you share or have a discussion with them, they might give you this answer. So what will be your suggestion or recommendation to them? Anyone who would like to share their perspective, their insight? Floor is open.
Sorry, could you maybe repeat the question one more time? I'm not sure I got it right.
So, Stella, the question is, uh, there is a local NGO. They are having a detailed bylaw. Like for example, at the time of registration, we get our bylaws, and it has each and everything, like what are the board roles, on which sectors it will be working, in which area it will be working, and how it will be reporting to the government, all that, like the basic information. So now, should they develop a strategic plan separately when they have a very detailed bylaw? How do we differentiate between a bylaw and a strategic plan? Stella, then Mohan. I hope, Stella, you got the question. Otherwise, Mohan, you can, if you have
Yes,
any
I did.
reflection answers. Yeah. Yes, Mohan.
Well, thank you, Mohammed. Well, thank you, Mohammed, for this question. It's really a very genuine question, I think. However, in my understanding, even though we have our bylaws covering all the aspects of our strategic plan, in my understanding, we still need to develop a compiled document that gives a kind of a strategic vision or strategic documentation of our works or of our plan that we are planning to do through our organization. So I think must develop the strategic plan even though we have our bylaws covering all those aspects. I think it will have some benefits because when we deal with the government agencies or with the development partners, we cannot, I mean, give all the bylaws and all those legal aspects or documents to them. But if we have a compiled version of our strategy plan, then we can easily I mean reflect our organization. So what we were in past, what we had done in past, and now what's going to be our future plan. So that's the must document for the organization. But the main thing is, if we are submitting the strategic plan, we have to be very clear whether that has been as strategic we are thinking or not. Sometimes we make the strategic plan, but we even have our question to ourselves. Several times we have asked this question to ourselves, that how far have we been able to be strategic. That's the most important thing we have to discuss, in my understanding. So uh, mm, as a conclusion, what I would like to say is, definitely we have to make our strategic plan, but let's try to make it more strategic. Let's try to make it short and very smart, so that we can, with few words, with few pages, we can reflect our organization and our strategies. Thank you. Thank you.
Uh, thank you, Mohan, for this really good insight. And then, and you are spot on. And there was bylaws might not give us opportunities to have smarter objectives, though they have the objectives, because again, depending which kind of the bylaws exist in certain countries, they ask for uh, overall objectives and then the program wise objective as well. Anyone else who would like to proceed? So it's, like bylaws is like if you are making um, a vegetable or a meat food. So bylaws is basically the vegetable or meat, but what is missing is the ingredients, like the onion, tomato, the spices, the things which give the fragrance. So, like in terms of analogy, so basically the strategic plan, it has different other ingredients. Those make it more comprehensive, much more relevant. So bylaw is more specific, whereas the strategic plan, it covers different other dimensions, particularly how the support functions or how it will be translated into the implementation. And it building on what you contributed, I have one more question for your, like mm, insight and from your experience, like as an expert, as a development practitioner, what will you suggest? Like there is an organization which has a 4-year strategic plan which is focusing on development priorities, like it is developed based on the development context, and suddenly there was uh, uh, an earthquake followed with a flooding situation, and then the whole context has changed. So basically, the organization is executing more humanitarian projects. So it happened in the second year. This whole context has changed. So now when they see their strategic plan, they realize like it is not appropriate, or it's not reflective what they are doing currently, because now they have more humanitarian projects which they are doing. So what should they do? What is their next move should be, in order uh, to to be more like appropriate in the changing context? Should they stick to their existing 4-year plan? Should they revisit it? What will you suggest them, or how will you go for it? Any suggestion, any ideas, any insight? Because you, all of you are development practitioners working for long time and having good experience. I hope this scenario is quite clear.
Hi, Anwar.
Yes, yes, Daniel, please go ahead.
Yes, yes, we will revise our strategic plan. Then we will update our strategic plan considering the situation.
Okay, so Daniel, I have follow-up question. How will you revise it? Like, will you follow the alignment model, or will you go with a basic model? What will be your approach? Because you are already in the middle of
Our approach
the
is basic model of change.
okay.
So with concerning board members and stakeholders, we will revise the strategic plan considering the situation we have faced.
So another follow-up question. So for example, will you make a strategic plan two-pronged? Like, will you focus it as a humanitarian section separately, or within existing programs, or existing focus, you will integrate the humanitarian programming or humanitarian agenda? So what will be your approach for
Uh,
this revision process? So
okay,
this is a follow-up question.
okay, we are integrating with the existing, strategic plan because, we do have a number of thematic areas. This strategic plan is consider all our thematic areas. Humanitarian response is one of the thematic area. So we are considering, we are integrating with with the other, thematic areas.
Okay, okay. So thank you, Daniel. Anyone else who would like to reflect on the same question? So again, like again, in certain organization, this is a kind of a practice that they integrate the humanitarian response or emergency response or disaster risk reduction programming in their strategic plan. They integrate it properly, and in certain organization, they make it as as a separate program. For example, in the beginning, I shared at PIN we have emergency response and recovery. That's a separate program. It is also integrated in our other two pillars, programmatic pillars, but it is also a separate plan. So this is again, we need to see if it is if in a middle of a strategic plan, if it happens through alignment model or through light touch changes, we can integrate it instead of waiting by the end of the strategy period. So this is one of the ways of doing it. And because of the time constraint, I'm just quickly sharing some of the resources. There are few web links, and I'll do encourage you to visit these links, and particularly the last one. It has a very good repository of different type of strategic plan of different organization, with focusing on education, charity, relief work. So like you will get a very different perspective, how different organization they have different template. And here, for example, the Civicus manual on strategic plan is there on the right side, and then there is a strategic plan template, which I found it on Google. Then there is a strategic plan action plan. For example, if you want to develop as part of the strategic plan cycle 2, if you want to have a strategic plan outline, this can be a good reference, like what is the timeline, what is the sequencing of different activities, how do you track it. And in case of engaging a consultant, this one was from a WHH supported uh, partner in Pakistan. Recently, they advertised it for engagement of a consultant to facilitate the strategic planning workshop, strategic planning process. So, like these are different resources which give you some different flavor, like how it can be done in your organizational context. And again, just to reflecting back on the organizational capacity and why we have a strategic plan, why we n- don't stick to the bylaws. So basically, there are in different organization, they check, they focus on differently on the outline or the content of the strategic plan. So here I'm just giving you a flavor, like how in the local NGOs they have a broader outline of a strategic plan. Again, you can recheck it. The organizations, those have the strategic plan, like is it similar or is it different, and how they can, in case if they have some gaps, they can enrich it, they can make it more comprehensive and cover the missing elements. And again, the one those are developing, they can see and they can take some learnings from other available resources. At PIN, usually what we have a very simplified approach for our country program. So basically, we suggest on 6 areas altogether, and then the seventh one is more annexes as part of the the country program strategy, how it can be implemented. So again, this is from the PINS context, whereby we are summarizing the whole process into a very brief document, and it has to be less than 25 pages. So it should be reader and user friendly. And again, these are just some samples just for your own reflection. So at least you know how it is being developed by some organization in their own context. And again, in terms of having any structure, like how we can make it from a theory of change perspective. So this is one template which we can see, like like if we are working in groups, how it can be done quickly. Any question, because I'm just mindful of the time, and in case if anyone has any question, any query to ask, yes, please go ahead.
Hi, Mohammed. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. I do have one question. Could you please elaborate more on that strategic plan and difference between the strategic plan and implementation plan? Because no, in strategic plan, sometimes we see the key activities are given, whereas in implementation plan, we think more about no, what we'll do, the kind of activities we'll do. So there is, I do have some confusion between these two plans.
Okay, so that's a good question. So like usually the strategic plan is more broad, and it is driven from the organization's working. For example, even if you have project, if you don't have project, still you come up like, okay, in each of the program, like if you are doing livelihood or if you are doing food security, uh, this is what we will be doing it. If we have budget for it or not, still we will do it. And then we come up with our implementation plan, like this is how our modality will be. These are the activities. If we have budget, we will carry out. If we don't have budget, we will carry out. And in certain organization, they do a reversal approach. they basically map out their existing project. For example, if the strategic plan is having a duration of 4 years, whatever the projects they have, then they see like which projects can complement to the strategic plan, what are the activities they are doing. So then they make a integrated plan based on the project activities and the strategic plan ambition. So basically, it's kind of a more strategic plans implementation plan is more abstracted from the strategic plan direction or its execution and with our existing projects. So it's a combination of both of one, because otherwise, for example, uh, in terms of the resource mobilization, there are certain targets, those are set, and again, based on that targets, the efforts are made for the resource generation and also for the implementation of the existing project. So then at least the continuity of the strategic plan goes. I hope I answered your question, or still if it's unclear, please do raise it.
No, thank you.
And there was, yes, surely we will share the PowerPoint presentation. Any other question from anyone else? Okay. Our next webinar will be on 2nd of May, and there we will be talking about organizational capacities, because today we talked about uh, organizational capacity, but in that one we will share more around how do we define organization. So basically the different features of the organization, their capacities, and how we can like differentiate between internal and external dimensions, and how we go for programmatic or thematic or cross-cutting strategies. So it will be more around, because there are a lot of words which we interchangeably use. Those might be having different understanding, different interpretation. So this is what we will be discussing in our third webinar. I hope in case if you have any question, any follow-up support requirement, you can always approach us. You can access our Civil Society Now platform, or you can approach via this email, and we will share the recording of this webinar along with the presentation with all of you. Thank you very much for your participation, your sharing, your insight. Yes, Shadi Rahman, I could see you have a raise hand. Uh, in case if anyone has any comment or question, please do feel free. Otherwise, looking forward for your participation in next webinar. And if you have any follow-up question, you can always approach us via email, and looking forward to our next engagement.